Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. It's 9 o'clock here in India. It's dark outside. Good evening in India. Good morning in the Americas. Yes, Australia with this time zone, I think is asleep. Singapore is still awake, I hope. Singapore, Malaysia, where Venerable Thubten Chodron is very well known as well. Welcome everybody to the Days of Miracles, and I hope you all had a lovely Sunday or still enjoying a lovely Sunday. And today's guest, we are so happy and honored to welcome Venerable Thubten Chödron. And I think most of you will definitely know her because Venerable Thubten Chödron, she does so many things. So I will just introduce her while waiting for her to join, maybe in 5 minutes or so. So Venerable Thubten Chödron is coming from the US, and she was ordained as a Buddhist nun in 1977. So we will hear probably a little bit later how all that happened when she tells us about Lama Yeshe and how she met the Lamas. And then she received full ordination in 1987. Yeah. So she studied extensively with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tsenzhap Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and many other lamas for many, many decades. Then she has been teaching worldwide. I think many of you must have attended her teachings. She does so many projects. She's involved in the prison outreach, in interfaith dialogues, and she is, of course, the founder and abbess of Sravasti Abbey in the US. Wonderful, abbey for not only for nuns and monks, but also for lay people. Then she is the author of many wonderful books on Buddhist philosophy and meditation. And currently she is involved in assisting His Holiness the Dalai Lama in a series called Approaching the Buddhist Path. So I have one here. Can you see it? Yeah. How many volumes have been published already? I think we're up to 3, not sure. I have 2 here. Check them out. They're really wonderful, very accessible. So Venerable Thubten Chodron is very well known for her warm humor, for her very down-to-earth approach, and we are so happy to have her today as a part of our Days of Miracle program. I was told by my coworker that she might have joined, and I can't see her yet. Let me see if I find her. Venerable, can you? Oh, yes, actually, I have you. Thank you. Thank you. Host. Venerable Damshila can see your sign, but not your video yet.
I better have my hair.
We have.
Sorry, give us a second.
Of course, of course.
And AIDS, you know, we're all getting older. Okay, ready? Okay, everybody. Hello.
Venerable Thubten Chödron, I can't find you yet. I'm so sorry. Oh, so many people joined so quickly that I lost you. Ah, here we go. Yes. Welcome, Venerable Thubten Chodron. Good morning. Good morning to Sravasti Abbey. We are so honored to have you today again for the Days of Miracles. Thank you so much to join us in this auspicious time. Yeah, we are very, very happy. And we're looking forward so much to some teachings and stories about Lama Yeshe. And yeah, it's always so delightful to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so I realized that in thinking about what I was going to say today, that last year you asked me to tell stories about Lama Yeshe. And this year you asked me to tell stories about Lama. And I can't remember which stories I told last year. So I'll probably tell the same ones this year. So maybe your memory is as bad as mine. I don't know. And they'll seem like new stories to you. Okay.
We love your stories, Venerable Thubten Chödron. Please, please.
Okay. Let's first start with our motivation. Yeah. Come back, get your breath, let the mind relax. And just as Lama would always have things start out with our motivation and generating bodhicitta, let us do that as well, so that we will listen and reflect on what we hear and see how we can integrate it in our life. Because Lama's life itself was a teaching. And there's a lot in his story and in our stories about him that can really help us on our path to awakening. And that can help us generate the qualities on the path. So with that kind of motivation, and let's share this morning or this evening. Okay. So I'm seeing that some of you are people who come to the Abbey, and some of you are people who I knew, when I had less gray hair. Well, or some of you even I knew when I had more hair. But now we're here together again, sharing. We all look a bit different than we did before. And it was for those of us who knew Lama, it was really, I think, a very special time in our lives. When I personally think about the influence of Lama and Rinpoche, because they were my very first teachers, they saved my life, basically, in the sense that they taught me the Dharma and taught me how to try, at least, to make my life meaningful, to try and do something good. So I'm very deeply, I have a lot of appreciation and gratitude for that, because that kind of kindness you can never repay it. Yeah. So just a little bit about Lama's life. So as you know, he grew up in a village that's outside of Lhasa. And then he wound up going to Sergej, because they usually do their initial studies in their local monastery, and then they go to the major monasteries in Lhasa. So he went to Sergej, and then in 1959, there was the uprising against the Chinese communists. And Lama at that time, he was born in 35. I think he's the same age as His Holiness. Yeah. So in 59, it meant he was 24 years old. And he said they all went into the mountains behind Sarah. He said, we took our teacups because as Tibetan monks, that's your most treasured possession, is your wooden teacup. That's what you put your samba in and your buttered tea in, and you took it everywhere you went. So he said, we took our teacups and we went into the mountains, and we thought we would be there, 1 day, 2 days, that's it. And then things would settle down and we would come back to Sarah and continue our studies. And that's not what happened, because when they heard that His Holiness fled, then, all those monks who were in the mountains fled as well, too, and many others, through different parts of Tibet. And it was much easier if you were in Lhasa to get out of the country than if you were in Amdo or Kham. And went to Buksa, which was an old British POW camp. Yeah, the one that was in the movies, remember, 7 Years of Tibet. So that's where, they went. And they went from, Tibet, very high altitude, not so many bacteria and viruses, down into India, where it's hot, lots of bacteria and viruses. And so a lot of the monks got quite ill. Some of them died in Buksa. Of course, it was like total chaos because these people had been in Tibet their whole life. They didn't know anything about the rest of the world, very sheltered, and they wanted it that way. They had the mountains that protected them, except on one side that where the plain opened up to China. So they were at Buksa. Rinpoche, somebody, I don't know if it was Geshe Zopa or somebody, asked Rinpoche to go study with Lama. And so that's, I think, when the two of them met. So Lama was there for some time, and it was pretty rough. I mean, they didn't have proper food or accommodations or healthcare or anything like that. And then I don't know how, somebody else probably knows, but how he got from Buksa. I think that they maybe went to Darjeeling or something. And that's where they met the Russian-American princess, who eventually got Kopan and encouraged them to teach Westerners. So we actually owe a lot to her too, because if she hadn't done that, they never would have, met the crazy people like us and begun to spread the Dharma. And you might say, oh, I'm calling us crazy people. But if you look at the culture the Lamas were coming from and the world they were coming from, and then coming into India and then meeting a bunch of hippies, because that's basically who everybody was then. There weren't the people who had, had money and were traveling well and so on. We were a bunch of kids, basically, usually we started out on Freak Street, which was a street down in Kathmandu, where you got your drugs, and then, tottered up to Kapan, because we heard, oh, there's this Lama up there, they teach meditation. Oh yeah, let's go try meditation, see what happens. So, I happened to meet the Lamas in California and then went back to India. But most people kind of started out at India. And then we had our meditation course. So there was a big tent. I mean, now there's this beautiful Gompa, huge statues. I haven't been to Kopan since 1986. But, I've heard it's changed a lot. But when we were there at the beginning, the courses were in this tent with straw walls, straw floor, and tons of fleas, and the fleas loved when we all came because then they were well nourished. And we sat there and just looked at Lama and took it all in, what he said. And he was saying the most amazing things, basically telling us that almost everything we were doing in our life was foolish, in the sense that we were all chasing sense pleasure. Yeah, we thought that's what life was all about. And that's, for most people in samsara, that's what life is about, is I want what I want when I want it. And most of what I want, it comes through the senses. And so, I want to get that. And so we had course after course about, as Rinpoche put it, the evil thought of the 8 worldly dharmas. And that was pounded into, seeking only the happiness of this life, the evil thought of the 8 worldly dharmas. And, lecture after lecture, this was, how Rinpoche taught, And then Lama would come in, because everyone, Rinpoche was there, everybody was like, there's the lower realms and, And then Lama would come in and he just would like light up the whole room and make everybody laugh and kind of make everybody relax. Yeah. We seem to relax, but when you studied with Rinpoche with Lama for a while, you began to see that some of the things that were funny, he was quite serious about. Yeah. And he would often point things out quite, and we'd laugh, but then went away and thought about it. Okay. I remember, one time in the tent, there was lay people and the Sangha, and I don't know what Lama was talking about, but the lay people, I can't remember, but the lay people were all laughing. Oh, Lama's so funny, he's so humorous, because he had this beautiful ability to make us laugh at ourselves and not take ourselves so seriously. So they were all laughing, and then the Sangha was sitting there like this, because we knew what he was really saying, and he was calling us out. Yeah. And he would do this. He was funny, he was warm, he was loving, and there was a line in there. Yeah, that this behavior is one thing, this behavior is not. But that ability to laugh at ourselves, at least when I think of one of the things I benefited most from with Lama, was that, is he taught me not to take myself so seriously, because he would point out the things that we do, in our samsaric craziness. And and make us laugh at ourselves. Yeah. And he would exaggerate those things. And we would think about, our lives and what we were doing, and then just laugh, because it, in so many ways, it seemed just from, of course, from a Buddhist viewpoint, so crazy. So I think that was something that was very good, because Lama had a way of, he really understood the Western mind, and yes, it's really true. We all have the same afflictions, no matter what culture we come from. It's not that different cultures have different afflictions. They come out, they're expressed differently in different places. But Lama, really tuned into how they're expressed in the West. And one of our big things is we put ourselves down and we take ourselves so seriously. So he really talked a lot about that, and about our poor quality view, So on one hand, he made us laugh at ourselves. On the other hand, he had us really look at what he called poor quality view. What he meant by that was our tendency to really be very hard on ourselves, and put ourselves down, have very high expectations, not be able to meet our expectations, criticize ourselves, feel that we aren't good enough, that we're never going to make the grade, we don't belong, this kind of lack of self-confidence and ability to really trash ourselves. And he would point that out repeatedly. And that was, I think, one of the reasons why he brought in Tantra, and the way he taught Tantra as a way to see that we are not who we think we are. Yeah, we are not this, poor quality person who can't do anything. We have the potential to be something else. And so imagining yourself as the deity and so on, he used that as a way to really see that, don't take yourself so seriously. Don't think that this is who you are, and you always are this, and you can't be anything other, and you have these bad qualities, and they're never going to change, and everybody's going to put you down because of it. It was like he really hit very hard on that, because it's a problem in the West. I think, at least my experience in talking about the Dharma with other people, is this self-criticism just becomes a huge, huge obstacle in people's practice. Okay, so he taught us to laugh. He taught us to not take ourselves seriously. He taught us to see that we could change. Yeah. And yeah. Okay, let me go back to and talk a little bit more about his life. So he's coming in, he's coming from the old Tibetan society where usually he told us, after you get your Geshe degree, then you go back to, your area in Tibet. And then, maybe you become abbot of the local monastery there. And so when he talked about his experience having to flee Tibet, he said, that's probably what I would have done if I had stayed in Tibet, is, gotten my Geshe degree, gone back, been the abbot of some small monastery, and then spend my time drinking tea, and people would give me lots of offerings. And he said, but I never would have really learned the meaning of the Dharma if that had happened. And then he said, and he would put his hands together and he said, but I really have to thank Mao Zedong for helping me learn really what the Buddha was saying. And when he said that, you know, based on his own life experience, we were all like, what? He's thanking Mao Zedong? Mao Zedong, who made him a refugee, who was the source of millions of people dying in China and in Tibet and the other places as well. But he really sincerely meant it, because he said, if it weren't for Mao Zedong and us being forced out of Tibet, forced out of our comfort zone, forced out of what we're familiar with. Yeah, because we like being in familiar places. We want predictability in our lives. We want safety. And, you know, they were totally pushed out into a whole other world with a different climate, different language, different way of governance. It was totally different going to India. But he said, this is how, you know, being a refugee, he said, that's when I really had to learn how to practice the Dharma and what the thought training practices in particular, how to work with them and their benefit in your life if you practice them. You know, because you're a refugee, who are you going to complain to? Yeah. Yeah, they couldn't complain to the Beijing government. They, you know, Nehru was incredibly kind and opening the door to the Tibetan refugees and giving them land and so on. But, you know, they had to learn English. They had to learn how things are done in India. And then they had all these hippies coming up the hill, you know, saying, Lama, what do you think about dropping acid and meditating? Yeah, you know, you could have really good visualizations if you do like that. Yeah. You want to try, Lama? You know, it was so funny because, you know, it's like, this is what people knew. It's like, oh, you want a good visualization? Yeah, you drop some acid, smoke some dope, and then you meditate and you have colors and everything. Yeah, just what you want, you know? Or you could get all the faces on Chenrezig, the different colors, and they were all sparkling, and you were supposed to feel blissful. And yeah, it was great. But Lama didn't buy into that. People would ask him, and he would always say, you're already hallucinating, dear. You don't need any drugs. What? What's he talking about? No, we're already hallucinating. And then he would talk about what ignorance does and how grasping at true existence distorts how we see things and how our afflictions come from the grasping at true existence, and how then all of our the afflictions create the karma, and our problems come from the karma, which came from the afflictions, which came from the ignorance. And it's like we began to say, oh, you know, he's right. We are hallucinating. Yeah. We don't still know exactly how we're really hallucinating, because identifying the object to be negated in the emptiness meditation is very, very difficult. Yeah. But sometimes in your life, you can get that sense of how you're making things too solid. Yeah. And how your anger and attachment, jealousy and arrogance are coming up because of that. Yeah. So there's Lama and Rinpoche too at Kopan, and they're trying to set up this monastery. And it was originally designed for the the young boys in the Sherpa area up in the Himalayas, because Rinpoche's previous life, he had been a yogi in that area. And so he wanted to do something for the kids in that area and, start the monastery. So bringing very young boys and then teaching them from the very beginning. Yeah. And of course they had nothing. And everybody was kind of in shock. So you have all the little boys there. And then you have the Westerners coming. And it was an interesting mix, yeah. Because we like to play with the little monks. But how to say? Okay. Well, let's put it this way. The sanitation standard at Kopan in those days was not what we were used to as Westerners, okay? So there was one kind of concrete room. It was called samsara. It was supposed to be one of those, the toilets where you squat, okay? But it was always plugged. So, but it sure smelled like samsara. So there was that for sanitation. And then there was the outhouses, but the outhouses weren't houses. They were basically holes in the ground with mats. There was a whole string of them with mats on either side, and then 2 boards over the hole. So, in the middle of the night, you better take your torch, because if you stepped in the wrong place, it wasn't going to be good news. Okay. So, and that was sanitation. And then in the kitchen, the little boys were cutting the vegetables. We had this great Nepali cook. He was, I don't know, late teenage, early 20s, really nice man. But the little boys are chopping the vegetables. What did they know about washing their hands? So some of us got hepatitis. Yeah, I was one of those. And some people got diarrhea and giardia and all sorts of things, welcome you to India and Nepal in those days. But what was so special about that whole time was the energy there. And speaking in terms of the Westerners, all of us were young. We met the Dharma. Something hit us so strong in our hearts. I mean, really strong in our hearts, that there was no going back after that. And so we had so much energy to practice and to do things. And that energy, thinking about it now, it was precious, because everybody was there for the same reason. Yeah. If you were at Kopan, if you were at Toshida or in Dharamsala or wherever, you were there for the Dharma, principally, after you got off of Freak Street. Yeah, but so we had a lot of energy. It was very, very special, I think. None of us knew what we were doing, but we were trying. Yeah, we were trying. So there was a lot of kind of funny things that happened. Lama had the boys were doing their puja in the Gompa, and then there was it was called the Inji Gompa. It used to be an astrologer's house. I don't know if it's even standing. They may have taken that down in all the work that's been done at Kopan. but it was a brick building, really cold. Okay, no heating. And we did our pujas there in the morning. And so, I told you how we were kind of a bunch of clowns trying to practice the Dharma. But there was one Italian monk, and he had trouble getting to. We would start puja, I don't know what time, at 5 or something like that, and he often, would come in late. So one day he came in like really late, or maybe he didn't come in at all. Anyway, somebody asked him, what happened? You weren't there for morning puja. And he said, well, I was in my room and I did my 3 prostrations. When I got up, because you're supposed to do 3 prostrations when you get up. And he said, I went down on the floor and I fell asleep. I didn't get up from my prostrations, and that's why I missed puja. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to tell you some other stories. And of course, to tell you specific stories, I have to talk about myself. And there's many other people. I heard Venerable Kadra was talking to you yesterday and telling stories. And so everybody who knew Lama is going to have different stories. And but there were a few that have really made a very strong impact on me. And after Lama died, that's, as time went on, that's when I really started to appreciate everything that he had taught. He had not only taught us the Dharma and sometimes taken out the texts, but he taught by how he lived his life. And he also had these one-liners that he would say. And this was just his, his personality. But these one-liners were always right to the point, okay? So sometimes people ask me how it was that I started giving Dharma talks and teaching and so on. Okay, so here's the story. I never intended to do this. So I'm at Kopan. There were people ordained before me. I was going to all, when they would give talks, lead meditations, I would go to all of those. And at the November course, Lama and Rinpoche would teach. And then there was a Westerner who would do the meditations and sometimes do Q&A and things like that. So one time I had only been ordained a very, very short time. I don't know, maybe a year or something. Anyway, I got word that Lama wanted me to be the Westerner who helped to lead the November course that year. And I thought, I don't know anything, I can't lead this course. This is, there's people here who are more qualified than me. And I went to Lama and I said, Lama, please, will you excuse me? I cannot be the Westerner leading this course. And Lama looked at me, if you know the look, he looked me straight in the eye and he said, you're selfish. Okay, Lama, I'll do it. So that's how I started giving talks. I mean, yeah, 2 words, you're selfish. But he hit the nail on the head, it really hit it on the head. And it's like, oh, so of course, you don't know everything. That's okay. But whatever you know, you're going to deny other sentient sharing it with others simply because you don't think you can. Yeah, that's no excuse. You share what you can do, you do what you can do, you improve yourself so you can give more. Okay, you know, that's yeah. So that was one-liner that he did. Another one-liner is everybody always wanted to ask Lama every question for what to do. Yeah. So you need something done around the monastery. Everybody went, Lama, you know, shall we put the dishes here? Shall we sweep here? Well, you know, who should do this? Every small detail, people running to Lama to ask him what to do. Yeah. And this, you know, Lama at one time, I remember him standing there and somebody had asked some small detailed thing, you know, that they could have figured out on their own probably. And I asked him something and he looked at them and he said, use your own wisdom, dear. He called everybody dear. Use your own wisdom, dear. And then he said, next thing you know, they're going to ask me where to go pee-pee. Yeah. Use your own wisdom. You know? So again, short thing, use your own wisdom. 4 words. Yeah. Cut through so much. Yeah. He's saying, don't come running to me asking every little detail about how to live your life. Yeah. I've given you teachings. This is what he's saying in those 4 words. I've given you teachings. You think about what you've heard in the talks, what the Dharma that you've learned, you apply it to your life and you figure out your own problem. Don't run to somebody else all the time to ask you every small thing. You know, of course, we need to ask for help when we need help. I mean, that's for sure. Okay, but not for every small thing. And so that too, you know, these things that I'm telling you, I also have a very clear mental image of, like, you know, how that came out. And so that, yeah, that really, yes, use your own wisdom. Stop asking your teacher where, you know, these small things like where to go pee-pee. You know? Yeah. Lama didn't have any problems about talking about bodily functions, you know, that it was not, you know, a big thing. That was another one-liner that he said. Another one-liner that is during the courses, the question always came up when Lama was teaching about the kindness of other sentient beings. The question would come up, well, what about Mao Zedong? What about Stalin? What about Hitler? You know, these are evil people. They harm so many people. How can you say all sentient beings are kind? Yeah. And people would, you know, would come on really fierce with that question. And Lama, you know, Lama would sit there and then he'd go, Mao means well, dear. They means well, dear. We're going, Mao Zedong, Stalin, Hitler mean well. They mean well. They're killing all those people because they mean well. That's not what Lama meant. What Lama meant, I think there's a few things in there, is in their mind, yeah, and this is how our deluded mind works, yeah, whatever we do, we think is something beneficial, at least for us and the people around us, yeah, because we have a very narrow view, you know, we take care of ourselves first and then the people around us and our group. And in terms of that way, you know, looking at it, you know, they thought what they were doing was helping their own country. Looking at it from another side, it's like they were harming people and killing them. But looking at it from their side, they you know, they didn't, what Lama's saying is they didn't realize what they were actually doing and how harmful it was. And they thought what they were doing was okay. And what he also meant is those people also had a lot of kindness in them towards their family, yeah, towards their friends. They were very kind, you know, they went home at night and, you know, picked up their kids and played with their kids and loved their kids. And so what he was getting across was people are a bunch of different contradictory qualities. We can be kind, we can be horrible. Yeah. And even when we're horrible, sometimes we mean well, but we're so confused that all we're basically doing is harming others and sending ourselves to the lower realms through creating so much negative karma. Yeah. But underneath it all, he's saying everybody is just trying to be happy. And if we look at things that way, that everybody, whatever they're doing, no matter what we think of that person, yeah, they're doing what they're doing because they're trying to be happy. And when they do harmful things, it's because they're confused and they somehow think those harmful things are going to bring them happiness. So they're confused. Anger is not the appropriate response to confusion and to means when you mean well. Yeah, compassion's the appropriate response. And so there was Lama, you know, saying, I have to thank Mao Zedong for making me a refugee. So he was really showing us, you know, in his own life, how to deal with these situations and how to transform our own mind. And in the process, one of the big points he was making was, you know, not only are people a bunch of contradictory qualities, and not only do we mean well, even though when we're doing harmful things, but also we do the same things as other people. So why are we getting mad? Yeah. And so this is very linked to our self-hatred. You know, if you're very critical of yourself, very critical of other people. Yeah. He's saying, have compassion for Mao Zedong, have compassion for Hitler and Stalin and Putin and, you know, Bush and actually Bush looks good nowadays. You know, how about Mark Gates? Oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Those of you who know American politics, you know, you have to have some compassion for people and realize that everybody's not all bad and not all good. Yeah, as the sentient beings. And And so not to be so judgmental of ourselves or of others. And then also really how to take bad situations and transform them into the path, you know? And so I know for me personally, some of the most valuable teachings that I heard from the lamas was the thought training, yeah, and just how to transform adversity into the path. And, you know, that Shantideva, again, hammered into us, but it was good, you know, it was good because every time the mind now starts judging people, you know, have to stop. And that one-liner from Lama comes back. They means well, dear. Yeah, that was Lama's English. They means well. Okay. Okay. Another few things of Lama is whenever he spoke about objects of attachment, he used chocolate as the example, you know, and how we love chocolate. And we look at chocolate and it has happiness inside that chocolate bar. Okay. And so I've got to get that chocolate bar and eat it. And then the happiness will come from the chocolate bar into me. Okay. So everything, the analogy, you know, the object of attachment was chocolate that he used. And he, yeah, in many cases, he was right. There were some other pretty strong objects of attachment amongst us, but that was one, you know, you could talk about pretty openly. Yeah, he used that a lot. What else can I tell you? Oh, so one day I, you know, was walking around Kopan and I looked up because there was a wall kind of when you came up the road, there was a wall at the beginning, you know, in front of where the Gompa was. And one day there was Lama on a ladder putting shards of glass on the top of the wall. And I said, what is Lama doing? And somebody said, he's putting the glass there so that none of the villagers will come and steal things from the monastery. And my critical mind went, what? We're Buddhists. We're supposed to have love and compassion. Why are we, you know, the villages are poor. Why aren't we helping them? Why are we putting shards of glass to keep them out? Because, you know, as if they were the enemy or they were scum or something like that. I had a very strong reaction to that. And it took me a while, and especially Lama putting the glass up. Okay, if he told somebody else to put it up, then okay, but Lama doing it? And then, you know, it took me a while to understand that I think what Lama was doing was protecting some of the villagers from creating the very strong negative karma of stealing from the Sangha. Yeah, because stealing from a monastery is, yeah, it's a quick ticket to hell. You know, when you're impatient at the airport. So I think that's what he was trying to get across, you know. But it really took me by surprise, and it made me think about things and how sometimes you need to take strong measures to prevent somebody from doing something harmful. We do not have glass shards on any of our walls here at the Abbey. Yeah, but yeah. then there was the time, what was also quite remarkable at Kopan at that time. And I think next week I'm supposed to tell stories about Kopan and Tushita too. This week it's Lama, so next week it's the places. But which story was I going to tell here? Oh yes, about Geshe Zopa. So Lama would ask some of his teachers to come and teach at Kopan. So Serkong Rinpoche came. That was a very strong connection for me personally. And Geshe Zopa came too, another strong connection. And Lama had this, okay, I'm gonna veer off here for a minute. The way Lama and Rinpoche guided us is very unlike many of my other teachers, Tibetan teachers, in that Lama and Rinpoche would lead guided meditations, and they would have senior Sangha lead Lamrim meditations. Usually in Tibetan Buddhism, the teacher gives you the instructions and then you're supposed to go off and do the meditation on your own. Sorry. But I think they understood that we didn't really know how to meditate. And so they would guide us, and they would have other people lead us in guided meditations. And I think that was something very, very special, because we really learned how to do the Lamrim meditations. When I talk to my friends, from other traditions and who study with other lamas, they often don't understand exactly how to do the Lamrim meditations and the value of doing those. And again, that's something that I personally am very, very grateful for learning. Anyway, they had invited Geshe Zopa there. The idea being that we were doing a Manjushri retreat, that we would hear, it was just a small group of us doing the retreat, that Geshe Zopa would teach maybe 3 evenings a week, and then we would be able to go back and meditate immediately on what Geshe Zopa taught us, which was a real blessing, because he was teaching Shantideva, and boy, there's a lot to meditate on in Shantideva. But Lama was gone, and Rinpoche were gone for part of the time that Geshe Zopa were there. Or maybe they were just gone the one particular day when this event happened. But anyway, Geshe Zopa had called everybody in the monastery to puja. So we were all inside the gompa, the main gompa, and doing puja. And then everybody, he insisted everybody come. And in the middle of the puja, there was boom, and there was an explosion. And everybody went, what's going on here? Okay. So somebody went out, because the explosion was quite nearby. It was at Kopan itself. Somebody went out. And what had happened is they had built a block of toilets, more modern toilets than our ones with the 2 boards, the holes with the 2 boards. So they had built, they were still squat toilets. And there was one monk who was checking them. And apparently, it wasn't, they didn't have the sanitation department come and check the toilets beforehand, not like here, where we're always having people from the government check everything we do. But there's somebody who comes. So what had happened was one monk had gone to check on the toilets, and he was he needed to look underneath to see what was going on, how things were getting processed. So he lit a match and was going to light a candle to look underneath, not realizing it was full of methane gas that exploded. Yeah. Yes, exploding toilets. Isn't that what you want? Yeah. So a little bit messy, a little bit stinky. Yeah, really stinky after that. But we learned a lesson, and certain the monk who did it too. Boy, yeah. Okay, let's see. I had the privilege, another little story about Lama. I had the privilege of helping him when he started to teach Uda Namche, Maitreya's text, differentiating the extremes in the middle. And he wanted somebody to help. He was trying to translate the verses, you know. So I got called in to help with that. I didn't know what I was doing. I never studied the text, didn't know the Dharma. Anyway, so I'm in there trying, and Lama is talking in Lama's English, translating these verses, and I'm writing it down. And we're trying to do this work. And every 2 minutes, somebody is coming in there to ask Lama a question. I think they still hadn't figured out where to go pee-pee, you know, because every 2 minutes, somebody's coming in. Lama, what do we do? And Lama, what do we do? Lama, what about this? Lama, what about this? Lama, so-and-so is doing this, you know. Yeah, this is the one that's great, you know, when they come in and they complain about another student. Lama so-and-so is doing this. Will you please tell them to stop? And so-and-so over there is telling that. You go in and tell them to, you know, be quiet. So what I noticed is every person who came in with a different thing, Lama would deal with it. He wouldn't spend a lot of time. He would just give some instruction. And then he would immediately go right back into the rhythm of translating this philosophical text. Okay. I'm sitting there going, why are all these people coming in and disrupting us? You know, Lama's trying to do something serious for class. And, you know, can't these people leave him alone for a minute? Yeah. But I watched how Lama handled it. Yeah. And this is something I keep in mind and I'm not very good at. But what I saw how Lama handled it was I had this image of water going off a duck's back. Yeah. Water doesn't stick on a duck. The duck swims in the water. It goes under the water. People splash the duck with water and the water rolls right off. It doesn't stick. And that's how Lama was dealing with all these different people and all their different things. None of it flustered him. He didn't get agitated by it. He just turned around and went back to what he was doing. Yeah. And very obvious distinction to how I handle these things. Because when somebody does something that irritates me, I ruminate on it for a really long time. How could they have said that? Didn't they know? What am I going to do to correct it? Da, 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 da. And I just have this image, you know, Lama talking about, you know, how to fix the Jeep, and then coming back, you know, to verse 10 and how we're translating it. You know, amazing how nothing stuck. You know, and so here too, it pointed out to me how much I ruminate. Do any of you ruminate? Any? Oh, I see a couple of people nodding. Yeah, a few more. Yeah, some of you, I guess, don't ruminate. Venerable Jampa, you're smiling. Do you ruminate? So, you know how we just go round and around. Our story, our version of reality, round and around. They did this, they did that. How dare they do this? What am I going to do about it? This is a national catastrophe. You know? Lama, come. Oh, this was another thing, another short phrase he used to say. Come, go, go. So he didn't ruminate. Things come, then they go. They don't stick. Yeah. Possessions come, go. Yeah. Your life in a monastery in Tibet, come, go. Yeah. So really, that's my little one-liner for remembering impermanence, and how often we forget impermanence and how much that causes suffering. Yeah, when we want to pin everything down and make it firm and secure and predictable and the way we want it. And we don't give space in our minds for other people to change, for possessions to come and go, for the whole world around us to change. We're in shock, And I really see that, now that the pandemic is kind of hopefully petering off, how many people were just affected negatively by the pandemic, by being cloistered, so to speak, not being able to go out and having their daily routines disrupted. And, and people having just mentally a lot of difficulty with that, and all of the ramifications of COVID and people dying and losing your job, or many people moving out of the city to the countryside, of seeing the government, at least in the US, not knowing how to handle this, dear Trump telling people to drink hydrochloroquine, was that it? Oh, goodness, and Clorox. It was good. Lama prepared us for Trump, this guy's completely nuts. And, okay, he means well, dear, but, use your discriminating wisdom and check out what he's saying and see if it's true. Anyway, seeing how the pandemic was so hard on people. And here at the Abbey, we just closed down. A few people, we let a few people come if they had been vaccinated, but otherwise, the initial closing down coincided with our 3-month winter retreat. And then it was just went on after that. And, it changed our life here at the Abbey. And we started doing more things on Zoom. We didn't have so many visitors. It was really very different. But I didn't find any of it disruptive or shocking or disorientating, or it's the other word that everybody has now. A trauma. Yeah. Have you noticed everybody has trauma nowadays? Yeah, that's one of the big flash words. Anyway, nobody here really had that going on. And I think it's because, somehow you remember, come, go, go. it's like, oh, there's been many pandemics throughout history. I never thought, it never entered my mind that I would ever live through a pandemic. But, it didn't live through the Tibetans' mind that they would become refugees. It didn't, go through the Chinese minds that they would have the hell of the Cultural Revolution. Yeah. Oh, we never kind of mentally plan for things changing in our lives. Yeah, we expect everything to go on as planned. And so that's another thing I think Lama really taught us. Things come and go. And, what are you going to stick on to? And he taught us that, when we were very young. And I think now a lot of us old timers, we're old. Yeah. And another group of people are coming up, but we're looking at come, go. And, how to prepare for death and so on. And accepting death as part of life. It's not some big deal when you think about it. We've been born and died since beginningless time. Dying is not some new experience. Yeah, we've been through it and we've lived. Yeah, when you think of it, yeah, we died our last life. Here we are, again in this life. So the key is to have another precious human life or be born in the Pure Land. So, that's where we have to put our energy. But just being afraid of death itself, if we really meditate strongly on impermanence and come, go, then it's going to happen to us too. Now, of course, that's easy to say, but when I die, I'll probably be going crazy and, bossing everybody around as usual, criticizing people. Don't you realize I'm dying? Leave me alone. Yeah, but still, there's some seeds in there to maybe try and do it differently. Lama was always also, as much as he talked about the evil thought of the 8 worldly dharmas, only seeking the happiness of this life. As much as he talked about that, he was not advocating asceticism. Yeah, he did not like people trying. This is what it is. When we were trying to be our image of meditators, yeah, he would call us on it. Okay, so meditators, this was like late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s, late 70s. Meditation was still something new and weird in the West. And we had our image of meditation. Like when I went to my very first Dharma course, this was at Lake Arrowhead when Lama and Rinpoche came the summer of 75. They came to Lake Arrowhead, California, and they were leading a course. That was my very first thing. And I went in, and Nick and Wangmo were there. So a man in a skirt, a woman with no hair. I was a little bit weird. And and the lamas were late. Oh, how unusual. And so they said, let's just meditate while we're waiting for them. Well, I had no idea how to meditate. So I had seen some picture in a magazine, some New Age magazine. I was from Los Angeles, so all the New Age stuff. So I put my hands, you put like this, And I rolled my eyes back in my head. And I sat there. I thought that was meditation. Thank goodness they came quickly, because rolling your eyes back in your head is really painful if you do it for any amount of time. Yeah, but that was my image of what a meditator is. And all of us, the early people at Kopan, we all, we heard about, you can get enlightened in this one life. Tibetan Buddhism has the way to get enlightened in one lifetime. So, wow, we were all going to do it. We were all going to get enlightened in that lifetime. So, we would sit there and, we were supposed to be meditating on something or another, but we were instead visualizing the cave that we were going to find somewhere up in the Himalayas, with its little refrigerator and a heater and, a nice box spring mattress. And, we were decorating our cave we were doing some meditation. And, but we were also going to be ascetics because we're living up in the mountain. Yeah. Ascetics, but with all of our comforts. But Lama didn't like when people tried to be ascetics, eating very little and, because some of us were into this, and doing prostrations late at night. And because we were going to get enlightened in this lifetime, and we have a long list of things we want to do while we're alive, and we're young, and we're going to do all those. So let's get enlightened and check that off the list. And then we can, go to Bali after that, the next thing on our list. So what Lama also, he would walk around and look in everybody's bedroom and look in wherever we were working. He would go in and check out what we were doing and see. And so there was one monk there, and he was going to do the ascetic trip. So in the, this old astrologer's building, where everything's brick and really cold, he had one of the very, very thin grass mats that he put on the floor. And that's what he was sleeping on. So Lama walked in one day into his room and saw that. I said, do you think you're Milarepa? Go buy a decent mattress and sleep on that. So, that's how when I said, he just told us straight out, he wouldn't put up with these things. Yeah. And it was also very interesting too, which jobs he gave to which people, because sometimes the job you got was the one you didn't want. Yeah. But you got assigned some job and you did it because Lama asked you to do it. And you had all this gung-ho energy for the Dharma. So we would stay up late at night. This was in the days, back in the dinosaurs, there was no photocopy machines, no scanning, no computers. There was one mimeograph machine, a hand-turned one. Okay, you remember the old mimeograph machines? You had to, you didn't have them, huh? So they were a joy. I was a teacher before I became a nun, so I knew how to use this stuff. So you have some kind of thing with like a carbon paper, but the carbon paper is facing up and a sheet of paper on top of that. You wrote on the sheet of paper, the carbon paper made the imprint on the back of your sheet of paper. And then you went to the mimeo machine and rolled it off and it made copies. Okay. So, one of the lamas would say, oh, we need phonetics for this and such a prayer, it's at 10 o'clock. And, it's like 8:45 right now, or 8:45. And it's like, okay, quick, we got to do something and get this together. And often it was, staying up late at night, writing things up that they wanted the whole group to have. And we just found out about it. So, we would sit there. We didn't have desks, no such thing as desk. We had our puja table, which was usually some kind of box or another, or an old crate or something. And so you would, write these things out by hand. There were 1 or 2 typewriters, which people used. And then, go and with the one Mimeo machine, crank it out. And we were so happy to do that. It's for the Dharma. We're helping the lamas teach. This is wonderful. I mean, there was just this sense of joy. Yeah. So we had to work. Yeah, we had to work. We all thought we were gonna just do a course and then go get our cave up in the mountains. And that Lama had other ideas. We not only worked at the monastery, but that at that time, some of the older students started asking the Lamas to come and teach. And so that was the very beginning of the FPMT. So we were also sent out to work in the Dharma centers. Or I remember Marcel, he was kind of one of the oldest monks who was there. And, he was a meditating, he was going to go off to the mountains. And Lama sent him to Kopan to open an import-export business. Yeah, to make money for the, for the IMI, for Kopan, and Mummy Max got sent off to, she was already doing import-export. I got sent off to be the SPC and the Gegu of Italian monks. Yeah. We all, got sent off somewhere, and we're doing our best. Yeah. In spite of our massive confusion. Yeah. When I think sometimes of the things that went on, it's like, oh God, the Lamas put up with us acting in this way, but they, they did. They saw, they had that kind of appreciation of Buddha nature. Okay, so I think time's up. I hope you got something out of this. You didn't laugh at all my stories. I was waiting for you to laugh, but you didn't. So maybe I'm a failure. But yeah, we'll continue next week. I think it's same day, right? So it's Sunday evening your time, Sunday morning here. Okay. And so we'll talk about, just Kopan and Tushita and what Tushita was like back then. That was really a trip too. And yeah. So thank you, Venerable Kumpan, for, for running Tushita and your whole staff and everybody who's working there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Venerable Thubten Chodron. Thank you so much.
Okay. Let's dedicate the merit. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much, Venerable Thubten Chödron. I laughed.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you so much for this delightful talk, and just showing us by stories that there's always some very deep truth behind it. And yeah, it was very illuminating, and I think everybody enjoyed very much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Very
you.
kind.
And all the
Have
best.
a good Sunday.
Okay, it's snowing here.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness.
Yes, there's lots of chenrezis falling from the sky all around us.
Wow, end of February. Amazing.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you, Venerable Chodron from Buenos Aires. I'm happy to see you.
And I'm happy to see you too.
Thank you, Venerable Chodron. Love you, Vajrapani.
Okay. Thank
you very much. Live long, live long.
Oh, there. Okay. Hi.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much. I laughed a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Shiva.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings, Venerable Champa. I see you to Venerable Champa.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I get to see all of you who were hiding your faces. Some of you, your name is iPhone. Okay. Lots of old friends here. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Venerable Chodron. I see you soon.
See you soon.
Yes.
Thank you, Kumpela. Thank you, Anila.
Thank you so much, everybody. Please join tomorrow again. We switch back to, thank you, Venerable Soyanala, for translating into
Thank
Italian.
you, Venerable Thubten. Thank you.
And
Thank
we
you.
switch back to 7 o'clock tomorrow to Venerable Droma, our very, very kind, now unfortunately ex-resident teacher of 6 years. And she will join us from Chicago. And there it is a little bit less of a time difference. So I'll be switching back to 7 o'clock Indian time tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Please join us and have a wonderful Sunday. Have a good night. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kumpen. Thank you. A domani.
Hasta mañana.
Hasta mañana. Bye-bye.